Good evening. Let me tell you a little bit about myself because that may give you the perspective of why we're out there giving these presentations. My name is Paul Walton. I'm the Chief Assistant Prosecutor in Oakland County. I have been with the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office since 1991. Prior to that, I served as an intern as an Assistant Prosecutor in St. Clair County and also with the U.S. Attorney's Office. My entire professional career since about undergrad has been geared towards eventually becoming a prosecutor. I am the son of an FBI agent, so my background is one of law enforcement. When I became a prosecutor in 1991, it was very quickly I was approached by the executive office team then and asked if I would be willing to move to a specialized unit that they were forming. And that specialized unit was called Major Crimes. Major Crimes very quickly developed into a homicide unit, and to this date, that's primarily what their charge is, the Major Crimes Unit of the Prosecutor's Office. And when I began in 1991 as an assistant prosecutor, we did not have computers on our desks. I would write out my legal pleadings in longhand, hand them to my administrative assistant, type furiously, do a quick edit, and get it filed, hopefully. Since that time, I actually became one of the pilot programs in Oakland County as the first assistant prosecutor in the state to have a computer on their desk. From there, we went to actually being one of the first assistant prosecutors that had a internet access. And it became very obvious to me very early in my career that this device that was an annoyance, because I would pound on it because it would freeze on me half the time, was going to be the future. And it was going to be the future not only for my office, but for law enforcement, but also for you. And as any future device, you will know that there's going to be good and bad. And every one of your sons or daughters, while they are attending a school out in this area, is going to be pushed to use a computer. But what we're frequently seeing is a lot of the students are not also being warned of the dangers that exist out there. So when Jessica Cooper became the elected prosecutor 9 years ago, or 10 years ago, she asked me to step outside of the Major Crimes Unit and oversee legal operations of the prosecutor's office. So currently I oversee a staff of 100 trial lawyers. I oversee the filings of between 30 and 50,000 pieces of litigation a year. And I do case management for all our major crimes units. And what became very apparent to me is, like I said, I knew the computer was going to be an important device. And in fact, frequently when I get asked to give presentations about forensics on murder cases, I'm asked what is the biggest change or what is the biggest advantage that you have seen in forensic evidence. And a lot of people will shout out, they will help me, they will say DNA, ballistics, fingerprints, serology, autopsy protocols, on and on. And I laugh. Because quite honestly, the greatest advancement in prosecution has not been any of these sciences, it has been social media. Social media is a phenomenal tool for prosecution. Why? Because the bad guys out there can't help but telling us what they did, when they did it, how they did it, where they hid the evidence, and what they're going to do next. Okay. Now, with that said as kind of the basic precursor of what we see with bad guys, good guys also do that. And your sons and daughters also do that. And there is a real risk right now that where they can begin on social media as early as 5th grade. A lot of schools are actually providing tablets and laptops. I think Troy School District is one of them that actually gives their students a tablet at 5th grade. There's oftentimes not enough warning given to our students about some of the issues that exist out there, some of the consequences that they're exposing to themselves. So, when we first initiated this program, it was a community outreach program. We went to the area schools and we started to talk to them about the issues that we were seeing that were emerging the most often. And it was sexting. And in fact, when we began to prepare this brochure, this is an old brochure, it's been updated a few times, but that was the #1 focus. And it was more along the lines of be aware of what you're potentially exposing yourselves to. No pun intended. But the reality changed very quickly. It is no longer simply just sexting. We are seeing that the devices that we are putting in our sons and daughters' hands are oftentimes being used as weapons. And we refer to them as actually weapons of mass personal destruction. because some of the mistakes that are being made by students have an impact not only on themselves, but their education, their career opportunities, their family. And what we want to do is, this is not a scared straight program, this is a straight talk program. And what it is we like to go out to area schools and we like to address with them the issues that we are seeing. So, we have retitled this a couple hundred times, and I'm going to give you the presentation that I am currently giving to probation officers that we just gave last week. I'm going to give it to the Pediatric Nursing Association next week, and the week after that I'm giving it to student counselors the week after that. And that is the idea of what we are seeing and how we are trying to proactively address the issues that we're confronting. The goal is simply this. You all seem like wonderful people, but statistically there are going to be 3 ways you see me again in my professional capacity. You have been selected as a juror, and I am going to bore you for a week. You are a defendant in a criminal case where I am standing across the court from you asking a jury to hold you accountable for what you have done, or you're a victim in a case where I'm trying to get your story before the jury. With the exception of maybe being a juror, which is oftentimes very interesting, the last 2 aren't pleasant. And the goal is simply this: I want you to put me out of business. I would like to wake up one morning and not have a criminal case to file, not a jury to stand in front of, not a sentencing to advocate for, or a request from a victim to champion. Now, is that a realistic goal? No. But it is a goal that I think that we can cut down on some of the more obvious mistakes that we are seeing that a lot of the youth make. When I indicated that we began the sexting presentations about 9 years ago, we had an inundation of cases at our office. They were parents that were outraged by the fact that there were nude photographs of their daughter, usually daughter, sometimes son, found on the internet, and they didn't want to go to school anymore, and they were having trouble dealing with things in school. So we began a program to talk to them realistically about what they're exposing themselves to. And that is also still part of this presentation. We used to see on an average basis 300 cases submitted to our office a year on sexting. We are down now to less than 100. So what the social change is, I don't know, but I hope that we are a contributing factor in that change. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of give you an overview of what we talk about when we give these presentations. Presentations is entitled to the students' responsible social media, and we've been doing this for the last 9 years. Originally there was a heavy emphasis on sexting, as we talked about. More emphasis now we place on hate or threat cases. And encompassed in threat cases are things like bullying. Our approach is to show them the consequences, both legal as well as educational, and to provide them real-life examples. Great thing about being an assistant prosecutor is I never have a shortage of interesting stories to tell. And what I try to do is tailor the real-life stories that we have, that we're dealing with social media and students, to let them know what we're really seeing. We change enough of the facts so they can't identify a particular person, but we give them examples of if they had simply chosen a different course of action, then we would see different results. We dress, where 2 are gathered, I will go. It's kind of the joke at the office. I have given presentations as low as 5th grade on sexting. Now, the caveat is the last time I gave this presentation, it was at a parochial school, and I could not mention the word sex. And can I work my way around that? Oh yeah. We talk about naughty pictures. But at least we talk about the points that we know that they're going to be confronting. Is 5th grade young? Yes. But is 5th grade too young? I don't think so anymore. And one of the reasons why is that you'll see during this presentation that there are going to be so many opportunities for people to ask your son or daughter to give them information. And from an educational standpoint, it's imperative that they understand that what they are surrendering is a little control of their life. And that's really the way we present it. I tell them early up during these presentations, I'm going to give you the punchline to this entire presentation. If you remember only one thing, I want you to remember this. Read it again, look at it again, count to 10, then hit send. And the idea is simply this. Get them used to rereading the messages that they are doing so they're not doing it in heat of passion, or that they have not at least thought through maybe some of the consequences that they may be creating for themselves. The community groups that we go to are PTA coalitions like this, religious institutions. Apparently I am now making a big impression on the Baptist community. I don't know why the Baptist churches are, but apparently I've got my a bunch of Sundays booked in the near future. And high school counselors, and I said pediatric nurses. We have about 10 different presentations. And the reason I point out that is I'm very cognizant of the fact that grade-wise they have to be presented differently. Subject matter, it has to be presented differently. And importantly, maturity level, it has to be presented differently. It is quite interesting, having gone to as many area schools in the county that I have, to see the vast level of maturity differences between two fifth grade classes. So what we try to do is meet with the counselors in advance, or meet with the teachers in advance, or principal in advance, talk with them about the specific issues that they are confronted with, get specific examples so that we can make the presentation all that worthwhile to them, more worthwhile to them. So, the most common types of cases that we are addressing at the prosecutor's office have to do with basically bullying. And I label bullying as a broad category. Not only individual bullying, where two students will air it out either in sexting, Facebook, or social media presentations. See, I'm letting my age go already. If I mention Facebook, you already know I'm old. And if you laugh, you know that. Okay. Ethnic intimidation, threat cases, and we'll talk specifically about those, and bomb threat cases. Also, we are seeing sexting. Sexting is still out there. Our presentation is one, though, more of, look, I am not looking to have a file of these pictures on my desk. And that's what we tell students, is when we get one of these cases, we download the phone, we print off the pictures, and they are on someone's desk. And that is mortifying to them. It is equally mortifying to me and the other assistant prosecutors that have to flip through that file and prepare it for the next hearing. And that is the idea of what I'm saying, is what type of control are you willing to give up to share a photograph? So, we talk first about the idea of sexting. And the presentation is pretty straightforward and simple. This is actually kind of more in reverse order. We usually talk about social media in generality first, and then we get to the idea of sexting. But the presentation that I just gave, the probation officers for Oakland County Circuit Court wanted me to address specifically this issue, so I've reversed the order just a little bit. So, what is the idea of sexting? Okay. Sexting is the idea is that you are taking photographs either of partially nude or or totally nude of an individual or a representation of an individual, which means that you can modify. You can go onto Adobe and modify the picture of someone that is under the age of 18. 18 is the magic number. Now, looking around the audience, I see that I have a couple of those that are in attendance that are youthful, so I will try to keep this about as PG rated as possible. And that's this. The age of consent in the state of Michigan is 16. So you can literally engage in a sexual act, but you can't take pictures of it. Because taking the pictures of it is a violation of the state law for sexually abusive material. The one thing that this country seems to agree on is that is going to be a uniform age across the United States and also federally. And when you think about it, it does actually make sense. Yes, age of consent varies from state to state, but the idea of sexually abusive material is pretty consistent at 18, under the age of 18. And the reason why is this. You don't want to be the state with the lowest age, because then you become the child porn capital for the United States. So, 18 is an important number. And recently I had teachers at Adams High School asked me why there was the difference. And again, I gave them this simple example, that 18 is what our state legislator said, 18 is what the federal government said, 18 is what 49 other states have said as well. I do not want to be the state where it is 17, 16, or 15, because then everyone in the industry is going to gravitate here to make pornography and abuse children. Because there is no question taking these photographs is abuse. And that is the way we handle these cases, and we will continue to handle these cases. We are trying to make less victims, not more. So, what is the idea of sexting? Well, actually, like I said, this is your cell phone in someone under the age of 18's hands is actually a tool of mass destruction, mass personal destruction, or it can be if there is not a candid conversation given to them. What do I mean by that? Well, there are a number of crimes talked about in sexting, and I'm going to give you a scenario, a simple factual scenario that we see unfortunately play itself out over and over and over again with grade school students, middle school students, and high school students that will violate all 4 of these provisions of state law in about 30 seconds. And usually it works like this. John is in love with a girl, and he decides that he is going to encourage her to go in and take a picture of herself. And he sees her in the hallway, he text messages her, he calls her, I don't care what the form is, he goes out there and he asks repeatedly for her to go out there and take a picture and send it to him. And the first 100 times or so, she says no. But eventually, she gets to a position where she feels, okay, I'm going to lose him, everyone else is doing it, whatever the rationale is. She goes into her bedroom, the bathroom, the locker room, wherever, takes her top off, pulls her pants down, whatever the variation is, and proceeds to take a bunch of selfies. That act of taking a selfie is creation of child pornography. So, the fact that she took a picture of herself is creation of child pornography. You cannot consent to abuse yourself. Now, the ask, where the boyfriend is asking, is solicitation of child pornography. So in that simple exchange, would you send pictures to me? That's solicitation of child pornography. Her going into the bathroom, taking the selfie, is creation of child pornography. What happens when she hits send? Distribution of child pornography. What happens when he gets it on his phone? It is possession of child pornography. Now, if the circle was closed there, we would probably, in 99.9% of the cases, never find out about it. And, you know, she can deal with the fact that she sent a picture on and that, you know, the relationship may change. But unfortunately, that story never ends there. What always happens is the following. Is after he gets these photographs, his first response is, holy cow, I can't believe she sent it. His second response is going to be, wait until I show it to the guys. And then what happens is the following. The way this scenario generally plays out is as follows. The picture gets shared over and over and over again. She starts going to school, people start snickering behind her back, They start making fun of her. She may get a text message from one of her friends that says something to the effect of, "What did you do? I saw some pictures of you." Pretty quickly, she realizes that those pictures that she took only for her boyfriend, only for her true love, are suddenly shared with the entire school. The next thing that happens is one that plays out way too frequently, and that is she doesn't want to go to school anymore. She doesn't want to hang with her friends anymore. She doesn't want to be involved in the various school activities. Her grades start slipping. She starts shaking every time she gets a text message. She freaks out when she gets notification that she's got something on social media. And after repeated conversations, she eventually will tell you that what had happened. And the response from the parents is pretty universal, and it's simply this: fix it. How do we fix this? And the next phone call is to the local police department, or depending on where you live in the county, to the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office or the police department's response are pretty universal. And it's going to be, we are going to take her phone and we're going to execute a search warrant on her account. We're going to find out who her boyfriend was, who she sent it to. We're going to take his phone. We're going to execute a bunch of search warrants on his account. We're going to find out all the people that that photograph was sent to and take those phones and execute search warrants. One case about 3 years ago in a middle school in Rochester Hills resulted in 23 search warrants. Because that photograph was sent to no less than 23 other young men at the school. Realistically, it was sent to a much wider audience. And again, the response is pretty universal: fix it. And then I have to have a meeting with the parents and the victim of the young lady. And we have to have a very candid conversation about what a potential prosecution is going to mean. And the prosecution is going to mean, first, I want you to get an attorney. Because the first thing that I think the defense attorney is going to ask you is what type of deal you got from the prosecutor's office to prosecute this case. Because you know that taking that selfie is creation of child pornography. And when you hit send, that was distribution of child pornography. We are not going to charge that case. But I can guarantee you, as a parent, I would want some assurances. Now, the young man who has got the photograph and is going to send them on to everyone in the world, he is also going to have to hire an attorney. And while the parents are sitting in my office, I say, okay, here's the reality. Here's the potential charges. Here's what the court is likely going to do. Because they're a juvenile, it's going to stay in juvenile court, which is not a court of punishment, it's a court of rehabilitation. The court is probably going to offer family services, they're going to ask for counseling, guidance, and on and on and on. But we will walk you through the case. I will provide a victim advocate for you. You will understand each and every phase and what we are going to do. But here's what I need you to do. I need you to get your son or daughter in counseling immediately. Because a prosecution is not going to get every one of these photographs back. And I assume that your son or daughter is going to eventually apply to a university. They are going to apply for a job. They are going to conduct some type of interview, and any person that is going to invite them onto a college campus or to work for them, first thing they're going to do is Google their name. And if that picture comes up, I think you better have a realistic conversation of how they're going to start handling that, because that could be the source of an interview question. And I think it's important for you to know that we are trying to get the information off the internet, but I cannot guarantee you I'm going to get it all off the internet. And that's a very difficult conversation to have with an adult. Parent, it's equally difficult to have with a 13, 14, or 15-year-old. So the goal is simply this, is to let them know, again, that when they send that picture, they are surrendering a tremendous amount of control. They are giving control to another person. And they are never going to get that back. And I can never guarantee you that we're going to get it back. The other ramifications that we are seeing, at least on a national scale, is one of teen suicide. Hope Witzel was a 13-year-old student in Michigan. And what she did a number of years ago is that she wanted to impress a young boy. So she went into the bathroom, or I think in her home, sorry. She took her top off, she took a bunch of photographs, and she sent it on to the young man that she was trying to impress. Now, this young man did not ask for the photographs. But what he did do is what any teenage boy, or a lot of the teenage boys, I would expect to do, and that is to share the photograph with everyone he could think of. And very quickly, it made it around not only his school, but the neighboring middle school. And it was a very predictable course of action. She becomes depressed, she becomes anxious, she loses interest in school, she loses interest in her friends, she wants to be isolated, and it becomes a downward spiraling cycle. Well, eventually she feels so isolated, so alone, and so much that she has ruined her life that she eventually writes in her journal that she can feel it in her stomach. She knows that this is over, that she is going to try to kill herself. And what Hope Witzel did at the age of 13 was to go into her closet, wrap a scarf around her neck, wrap it around a doorknob, bend down, and strangle herself. So what we are seeing kids do, or young students do, on the internet has real life repercussions. And sometimes they can be this devastating. So if you've got a son or a daughter who has talked to you about the idea that they have sent a photograph or they have been encouraged to send a photograph, it is time for a very realistic conversation to find out, did they send a photograph, who's asking for that photograph, and try to give them the tools to cope with the idea that it's okay to say no to send that photograph. And this isn't just limited to girls, this is boys and girls. But the cycle is pretty universal as far as what we're seeing, how this plays out. The other major issue is that by providing information like this on social media, you are also exposing yourself to a lot of danger. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you saw a truck drive down a little van drive down your street with no windows on it, looked beat up and said free candy on it, you are not going to gather your kids at the sidewalk and say, hop in. But we are seeing, at least figuratively, kids do exactly that. And what do I mean by that? Well, we've got a lot of predators online. And what do I mean by predators? What I'm talking to you about is predators that are looking for kids that they can talk to, engage in, and way too frequently abuse. Like I said, what could go wrong, right? This pulls up to your driveway, your kids are not going to get in. They know better. I actually put this photograph up in each and every presentation, and I get a lot of squeals and giggles and yells about it. But then I tell them that, you know, as much as you realize that you shouldn't get into that, you are getting into it, but in a much more dangerous way.
This was a sting operation that caught a lot of parents' attention. Predators using popular games to lure kids into dangerous situations. So we asked the world's most popular gamer about it, and if your kids don't always listen to you, maybe they're going to listen to him.
If you don't recognize the colorful hair or the excited laugh,
Yeah.
your kids probably will. This is Tyler Blevins, better known as Ninja Online. He's the most famous Fortnite player in the world. While he's streaming to millions of fans, a lot of times he's also giving other gamers important advice.
You don't know this person, so don't trust them. Don't give them any personal information.
Those words after a recent undercover investigation in New Jersey netted 24 arrests, accused sexual predators using some of the world's most popular games like Fortnite and Minecraft to prey on teens, all charged with second-degree child loading, all but one, a registered sex offender, released on bail. Among those arrested, a police sergeant allegedly using a messaging app called Kit to set up a meeting with a girl he thought was 15. He's now suspended, authorities said, and on house arrest.
Anything that gives strangers access to children potentially through the guise of a game has the potential to be dangerous to a child if it's misused by the person.
This year, with over 125 million players logging on to Fortnite and more than 250 million copies of Minecraft sold, experts say virtual worlds are becoming playgrounds where predators can easily blend in.
It's scary because, like, you know, he's right there and I'm not really paying attention to it. And obviously I should be.
Experts say parents should not only talk to their children about the dangers, but also set some ground rules about playing online. Never share personal information or photos. Only play with people you know in real life. Only allow gameplay in a room where parents can overhear and never behind closed doors. And disable chat functions whenever possible. We reached out to Minecraft, Fortnite, and Cake. So far, only Microsoft has responded regarding Minecraft, saying, helping keep kids safer online is a priority for Microsoft, and we provide parental controls for devices and gaming that help parents choose the content, communication, and sharing settings that are right for their families. Parents also need to be aware of what their kids are actually doing online, making sure it really is just fun and games.
Fortnite is meant to just be played, you know, it's a video game. If someone ever tries to like meet you outside of the game, that's a no-go.
All right, so that's one red flag, Gotti. What are some of the other specific red flags that parents should be talking to their kids about?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Craig. When are your parents coming back? If a kid is asked that on a game, somebody asking the kids for pictures, if they get questions like that, then those are immediate red flags, and they know that they need to stop the chat and tell their parents what's going on.
That's useful tips from Gotti Schwartz there. Now, Gotti, thank you.
Okay, this is a news clip that ran about a month ago, so that's how relevant this is. And I figure I can play this maybe for 6 more months before I date myself with the students. And there's a couple of interesting points. First, when this gets played, I always get Minecraft is a baby's game shouted out to me. But everything else they seem to know about. The other thing is that this actually illustrates a psychological process known as grooming. And what do I mean by that? If there is someone that is going to go out there and try to engage your son or daughter into an online communication and maybe try to meet them, they do not begin and end the conversation with one talk that goes like this. I'm a convicted pedophile. I'm looking for someone 12 years or less. I would like to meet you at a Starbucks parking lot. Can you meet me there in 10 minutes? And you may not be coming home from this meeting. That's not the conversation. The conversation also begins with, hey, you're really good at this game. Do you want to know some cheats, or can you help me get past this level? Would you be willing to talk to me somewhere else? Go into a chat room. And over weeks or months or sometimes years, they eventually win the trust of the person, the student or the child, to the point where they are actually willing to meet with them and not tell you. The process is called grooming, and the idea is what you do is you expose them to an idea over a period of time that they would normally say no to, but because they now trust that person, they are willing to share information and maybe go as far as meeting them. The other thing is did you notice that one of the suspects that was arrested in New Jersey was a police officer? He was actually an officer that deals with students, a liaison officer of some type. So he is someone that is used to dealing with or talking to kids. So your kids are getting in that van, or they have the potential of getting into that candy van. And what I try to encourage them is to be aware that if someone is out there trying to engage with them, they should let you know. They should have a conversation with you to let you know that someone is out there asking. Every time I give this presentation, every time, I have students come up to me, and last time was at Berkshire Middle School, last Friday, and every time I get someone asked me to go into a chat room. And the last time someone asked me to go to a chat room, I did, and they asked me for sex. And she was 13 years old. So these people are out there. They really are. I am trying to scare you a little bit, and I am trying to scare them too. Let me give you some other examples. This was a student who actually lived in St. Clair County. As you know, St. Clair County is a little north and a little east of us. And what had happened is that over a period of time, this young girl was encouraged to go into a chat room. And she went to a chat room and she provided a bunch of photographs that would qualify as sexting. And she felt embarrassed by it. And when the person at the other end of this asked for those photographs, or when that person asked for more photographs, her response was, no, I'm not giving them to you anymore. His response is, oh really? You're not going to give them to me? You think you're not? Well, let me tell you what happens if you don't give them to me or don't make more. I am going to send them on to every one of your friends because I know who they are. I'm going to send them on to everyone in your school because I know where you go to school. I am going to send them on to your church because you've told me where you go to church. And for 4 years, she lived that terror. Eventually, she talks to her parents, and because of the venue issue, and what I mean by venue is who would have proper jurisdiction to charge this case, the St. Clair County Prosecutor's Office would, a prosecutor's office in Florida would also, but the easiest unit of government to prosecute this case was actually the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District, and they chose to initiate prosecution. And what's important is, one, is that this was a very bright student, very bright girl. She would not begin a conversation with, send me some pictures, okay, I'll be right back. This was a process of grooming. Second of all, this isn't the creeper down the street who we sometimes identify or tell our kids don't go on their lawn, they scare us. This is someone that is across the country, literally. And this is the type of damage that you can do to a student remotely. The other case is actually a pretty famous case. It did not happen in Michigan, but it illustrates a very important point. One is the concept of grooming. Two is how far kids are willing to go sometimes to satisfy a new friend that they've met on the internet. This is several years old. You can tell simply by the social media forum that was used, which was Facebook. Teenagers do not use Facebook. They are so many apps beyond you at this point, or formats beyond you. And if you think you're cool and you talk to them about Facebook, you're going to get a rolling of the eyes and a snicker, okay? But this particular guy used Facebook a number of years ago. And what he did is he took not his mugshot photograph, which is on the bottom, but a kind of artsy-fartsy picture up top, posted on Facebook and identified himself as a 17-year-old boy interested in meeting new people. And lo and behold, a other 17-year-old girl decided that she was going to engage with him. She's eventually encouraged to go into a chat room where they could have more intimate and private conversations. And over the course of several weeks, months, I believe actually, she falls in love with this guy because he encourages her. He tells her all these things, you know, I understand you, your parents don't, I understand your teachers are jerks, you can do whatever you want. Whatever pablum was going to reach her at that time, he was able to discover, dissect, and then use. This is a true pedophile. This is someone that knows his audience, knows how to address his audience, and then knows how to manipulate his audience. Eventually, she agrees to meet with him alone in a dark parking lot where she is sexually assaulted and murdered. Now, this is also someone who was very, very bright and understood the dangers that were out there. But over a period of time, because she felt she found a new friend, was manipulated online. So, again, this is a little bit to scare you. These people are really out there. They really do exist. And they're usually very, very good at what they do. Now, the next big area that we're seeing is hate speech. And I use hate speech in a big, big discussion point. Because I don't mean the technical definition of hate speech, which is a famous case from 1968. It's the case of Virginia versus Black, which talks about hate speech is not protected speech and is a form of speech that can be regulated or prosecuted by the government. But I'm talking about hate speech in the sense that you are communicating some type of hateful speech to another person. And it can be in the source of some type of bullying, which may or may not be criminal, or it can result in something that is prosecutable. And what we try to do is, again, is to convey the idea that what are you willing to give up to send a message? What are you saying about yourself? What are you saying about the other person? Now, the end line to this is simply, I can say this, I have to use a different example, but I will say this to you. How would you like tomorrow your text message to appear on the front page of the Free Press in 72-point font for everyone to see? Would you be embarrassed by it? Did it sound like you're trying to hurt someone? And if the answer to those questions are yes, then don't send it. It's that simple. So, this is more for the probation officers. These are a whole bunch of different crimes that deal with hate speech, or that we have frequently prosecuted. One is false report of crimes. You probably know nationally as swatting. That is trying to get the SWAT team out to a house and respond. That is actually something students are trying to do. I have a friend who is actually a member of the Royal Oak SWAT team, and they have been swatted a number of times. They identify someone in the neighborhood that they don't like, so they call in, I just saw the guy strike his wife in the picture window. I think she's dying. And they send out the SWAT team. And you can imagine what a dangerous situation that is. Bomb threats. I'm not going to spend too much time on bomb threats because, believe it or not, they're passé. We are into a whole new category of threat cases that are much scarier. Making terrorist threats is the big one. If you are, okay, let me digress a little bit. Does everyone know what the age of an adult is for criminal prosecution in the state of Michigan? 17. 17 or older, you are treated in the adult court. Under 17, you are treated in the juvenile court. Adult court means exactly that. Those penalties up there, that's a 20-year felony. You make a false report of an act of terrorism, you can expose yourself to potentially 20 years of incarceration with the Michigan Department of Corrections. If you are under the age of 17, it means that you will go to juvenile court, where the process is that the court will take jurisdiction over you. We don't have convictions, we have adjudications. You are not found guilty, you are found responsible. It is not a sentence, it's jurisdiction. But beyond the terminology that we use, you're not going to see much of a difference, because it is the court having jurisdiction over every aspect of your life. Telling a student curfews, telling them who they can be friends with, reviewing class schedules with them, deciding whether they can learn to drive, whether they can have a job. If they violate the conditions the court has laid out, they can be held in a juvenile detention center. And the court has jurisdiction, depending on the crime, up to the age of 21. So it really is not kiddie court. It is actually has some major penalties. Using a computer to commit a felony, that is almost definitional. That is, if you are using a smartphone to communicate one of these threats, you have actually violated instantaneously 2 separate sections of the Michigan Penal Code. Okay, this is one thing that we talk to students about a lot, and that's malicious use of a telecommunication device. And I put this up here for a couple of reasons. One, this was legislation that was passed many, many years ago, way before the advent of cell phones, smartphones, social media. And it talks in terms of not social media, but telecommunication. Telecommunication is any device, such as a phone. Everyone remember landlines? Okay. Everyone remember the Princess phone? Okay. That is actually a device that that connects to a network that allows you to speak to others. That is a telecommunication device. So by definition, social apps, cell phones, texting, email qualifies as a telecommunication device. And I say, I want you to think right now, can anyone think of a way that a cell phone can be used as a weapon? And immediately a lot of students will raise their hand and they'll say, yeah, if I take my phone out and they throw it at you. That's a good example. That's actually a felonious assault, which would be a 4-year felony if you were convicted as an adult. Or, if I was feeling really generous, maybe just an assault and battery. But regardless, you're right, that is using the phone as a weapon. But if you pick up that phone and you dial and you decide to, I'm a little less sure about use of indecent language. I think that's got some interesting constitutional provisions on it right now. But if you falsely report a person as ill or dead or threaten harm to a person or property, you have managed to commit a 6-month misdemeanor. So imagine you get mad at a fellow student in the hallway and you text something to the effect of, I'm going to beat you up in the parking lot. Okay? That may be a true expression of your anger. It has also managed to violate the Michigan Penal Code. Now, do we look to prosecute these cases? No, we don't. But realistically, I can tell you what the charging philosophy is at my office. I have no idea what the charging philosophy is in, for example, Livingston County. And the reason I bring that up is that if you were to send that communication to another student in Livingston County, 2 places now have jurisdiction to initiate prosecution. One would be Oakland County, where the message began. The other one would be Livingston County, where the message terminated. So it's important to have a discussion with them that these communications have a broader effect than just the 4 corners of Oakland County. The other one is, and you'll probably get freaked out about this because I know everyone has done this one, and that is interference with a telecommunication device. Oftentimes we use this in domestic violence cases called IWICs, and that is the concept that someone is being assaulted, they go to their phone, they pick it up, the boyfriend knocks it out of her hand and prevents her from calling 911. That is interference with a telecommunication device. Okay? That is a 2-year felony. And we have used it very, very successfully in prosecuting a lot of domestic violence cases. The goal is obviously there to prevent further harm and allow the victim to break the cycle of violence, or at least giving them some means to break the cycle of violence. But here's the one that I like. You see that third one? Shall not use electronic device without permission. Okay. Anyone ever use a neighbor's Wi-Fi system without their permission? That's that crime. Or what we frequently see is that students will either know each other's passwords and go on to their social media and get mad at them and to create some fictitious posts that they're trying to generate a stir of, fake posting or along those lines. We use that charge oftentimes to initiate prosecution in those cases. And it also we have also used it to deal with situations where students have been stealing each other's messages, deleting them. So, you know, mom texted you that you need to get home. They go on, they delete the message because they think they're funny, so they don't know that mom's going to be mad at them. They've been much more serious cases than that. But it's the idea of going onto someone's device or app without their permission, or Wi-Fi system without their permission.
So you're not talking about parents supervising?
No, no, no. These are all individual acts. No, the parents are not liable for this, unless you're aiding and abetting, but I'm not going to get into that right now because I know you're not doing that. Okay, the big question is, I get this, is can I really get in trouble for something that I posted on social media, even if it was a joke? And I really want to spend a lot of time with you with the idea of false report of an act of terrorism, because this is the charge that we are seeing over and over and over again. And I want you to be aware of it because I can see how it can play out in a number of ways in various situations, but I want you to know what our office's response is going to be in conjunction with law enforcement, because I think it's really important to know. Okay. I use this case because this was an actual case and it made a lot of media attention. A couple years ago in Brandon Township, there was a student who posted a report that qualified as a false report of an act of terrorism. And what he did is he was a high school student, and he used a social media app that was in existence at the time called After School. After School was kind of a unique, almost like electronic billboard. What it did is it allowed you to sign on, create an account, create an identity, and then you could post something. Then you would post it to a region. So you could choose like a zip code region or a school region. And all other students that were signed on for that region could then read the message. So you didn't have to worry about building an audience, being liked, anything like that. So what this particular student did is he thought he was very smart. And he realized that what he was going to do was probably going to cause a lot of problems at his school from a social aspect. I don't know that he was necessarily thinking legal, but from a social aspect that he didn't want to get caught. So he did what any of us might do and go on and create another email account. And everyone knows that you can do it very easily and very quickly. So he creates an email account, then he signs up for this particular app, and he creates an online identity. And he decides that he is going to limit his region to the Brandon School District. Well, what he posts at about 7 o'clock in the morning on a Monday is the following. Tomorrow, I'm going to shoot and kill every last one of you. It's going to be bigger than Columbine. Death to you all. Now, there's a couple names that I can mention right now that I know that is going to cause your blood to chill. Columbine's one of them. Sandy Hook, Virginia Tech, Parkland. And what had happened in this case, at about 7:30 in the morning, another student who was signed on this social media app looked at the app, saw her media feed, and saw this message, and she took it to mom or dad. Now, I'm going to ask you the same question I ask your sons or daughters. Do you go to school? Do you send them to school? Why? It's just words. The reason why is this. Because these words are designed to incite terror, fear, trepidation, personal safety. You are certainly not going to send your son or daughter into a situation that there's a chance, even a small chance, that they may not walk out of. So, what happened is about 7:35, the parents call the sheriff's department because that's the jurisdiction that patrols that particular area. At 7:40, I get a call from the sheriff's department. 7:45, I'm on the phone with the FBI and the Treasury Department. 8 o'clock, we know who sent it and where they sent it from. 8:30, the sheriff's department is pulling up to the house. 8:31, they are pulling Mr. Young, who is the student, out of the house in handcuffs with his parents behind him, and he keeps yelling back to them, Mom, Dad, I'm not that guy. I wouldn't do this. I don't have a gun. I'm not going to shoot or hurt anyone. I'm not that person. Because he was 17, we take him to the adult court. And we begin the arraignment process. Because now he is facing a 20-year felony. Well, eventually we get to the guilt phase, where he is found guilty. And his defense was the same. And both the judge and the jury said, I don't care. The fact that it was a joke is not a defense. The crime was committed, young man, when you hit send. Period. So, why do we take this seriously? This is why. Last Valentine's Day, a student who had graduated from Parkland High School walked into that school with a semi-automatic rifle and shot and killed every one of these people up here. Now, before the rampage began in that particular school, it began on social media, where he posted a number of threats. And there was a lot of criticism from both the FBI and the local law enforcement that they did not take or act on the threats seriously. And from that day, moving forward, there has been a monumental change in law enforcement's national approach to this. And it is one of swift and quick response. If a threat like this is known, there is going to be an investigation. And in Oakland County, we are going to find out who sent the message. And we are going to show up at their house. And we are going to show up with a search warrant in one hand and handcuffs in the other. And we are going to take them out of the house. And if they are a juvenile or minor, I'm going to demand that we go through the house and look for weapons. And the way I tell older students is, I'm going to make sure the police go through your underwear drawer. And they are going to find everything that you own. And they are going to document it. So that, you know, that ounce of marijuana you've been hiding from mom and dad, that's going to be known. And everything else is going to be known too. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for a psychological assessment, because I want to make sure that they are not a risk to themselves or to other students. The third thing that is going to happen is we will initiate prosecution. And we will charge false report of terrorism. Doesn't mean it's going to be the ultimate crime that they're convicted of, but it is where we're going to start. And one of the reasons why is this, is each and every time that we've had to investigate one of these cases, the response from the school district has been universal. Is he a danger? What are you going to do to prevent it? Over and over and over again. Now, Oakland County, we have seen this charge used with middle school and high school students 50 times since Parkland. 50 times. Oakland County is a county of 1.27 million people. So we're not that big. And to have 50 terrorist charges initiated, like I said, it's not ultimately the charge that we always end up with. And I have yet to send anyone to prison for 20 years on this. They are, 20 years is the maximum, and there's diversion programs and everything else. But it is a serious charge. And here's the other here's the other consequence. Even if there is straight probation, there's diversion, they're not going into custody, they're on probation for a number of years, and they're done with the charge, realistically, they are not getting into a university. They are not getting into a college. If they wanted a career in law enforcement, they can kiss that goodbye too. They will not get a job with the federal government. And I have been told, although I don't have any direct documented proof, they are going to have problems getting on an airplane. Especially if they make the mistake of asking for pre-screening. So this has serious repercussions. And like I said, I can see it played out very easily. Starts with a fight, starts with some words exchanged in the lunchroom, and quickly goes online to something like this. And how do I know it? Because Mr. Young's defense ultimately is, do you know why he went on and he threatened to shoot his school? He was protesting bullying. So, and every school district in this county right now is going to respond severely. And let me give you some examples. Recently in a school in Berkeley, I believe, it started with a fight in a cafeteria where one student shouted out to another, "I'm going to shoot every last one of you." Well, the response from the school district was to call the police. The police called us. We went down there with a search warrant. We pulled the student out of the school. We began the process of evaluating them for risk to self or others. And the rest of the school kind of sits back and wonders, is this person fit to be in our school? So it has repercussions beyond anything that we do legally. Now, we ultimately resolve that case, short of report of terrorism or anything like that. We were able to resolve the case to the satisfaction of the school district and the parents involved as well. But I will tell you the student had to leave that school, because she could not deal with the humiliation of walking down the school hall again. Here's some other examples from some others. One student posted a bunch of photographs of a gun and said, each of these photographs made reference, excuse me, that he was going to go to the St. Mary's Fair and shoot it up. Another charge that we are seeing on an increasing basis, unfortunately, is ethnic intimidation. And if you are an adult, it is a 2-year felony. And what do I mean by ethnic intimidation? Oftentimes when we are seeing it in a school setting, it is a bunch of students who decide that they are going to distinguish themselves from a bunch of other students. And they do it in an aggressive manner where they attach some type of threat and then distinguish themselves based on gender, national origin, religion, or ethnicity. Well, if they engage in that type of conduct, they have violated the ethnic intimidation statutes. Period. And again, this is a no tolerance or zero tolerance. And the way we've seen this play out has been in a bunch of unfortunate ways. Some have been very high-tech, such as using of the internet. Some have been low-tech. A number of years ago, we had some students who would be involved in a social studies program where they were debating or figuring out how to limit damage from social inequality. And some of the students in this particular class got hooked on or started doing research, and they went to the Ku Klux Klan website. I did not know the Ku Klux Klan actually had a website, but they do. And apparently the Ku Klux Klan puts out brochures. And what they did is they printed out a bunch of brochures, took photographs of other students, cut their pictures out, pasted them over the pictures on the brochures, wrote "You're next," and started putting them in lockers. Now, these are students who, during fifth hour, are debating how to rectify social inequality, and during their lunch hour are stuffing Klan propaganda in students' lockers. Again, when we were confronted with this case, we met it head on, and it was swift. There is no tolerance in any school district for this, and there is no tolerance in my office for this. Next crime I want to talk to you about our idea of stalking. And I know that sounds like, some guy that follows you home at night every now and then, won't leave you alone. Okay, this is frequently also done by students. And I usually give the tagline this: at your age, stalking is not a dating technique. Okay? If you go online and you start texting someone, or you go on social media and they tell you to leave them alone, leave them alone. Because we can reach the point where it's, cute persistence to creepy behavior to criminal very quickly. And if you are having continuous conversation with someone who has told you to leave you alone, then leave them alone. They have every right to say that. And if you decide to do it online, you've just made my job that much easier, because I can prove the contact that you've had, when you've had it, and what you've said. Okay, so what do we tell students to do? What we tell students to do is, if you see one of these messages, you receive one of these texts, you are aware that another student is out there as being the victim of some type of bullying, say something. Try to talk to your parents, try to talk to an adult, try to talk to a school liaison officer, but let them know about it. Because the only way we're going to be able to combat this is if we can get the resources out there. Second, do not delete the message. Now, I say this with a great deal of caution, because if they've received the message and they're calling them names or they're being bullied, I know what they're going to do. They are going to read that message 50 times a day. Every time they're in a car, every time they have a break, they are going to let that message define them. So we caution them not to do that. But the reason I need it is, if I'm going to initiate prosecution, it oftentimes helps to find out when it started, how it started, the message that started this, and where it went from there. But if the end result is psychological well-being and me having a piece of evidence, then delete it. I'll get it another way. I'm actually very, very good at my job. The other thing that we ask them to do is, if it's on Snapchat or an app that disappears, make note of it. Just let us know about when you received it, how you saw it, what you recall from the message, if you recall a picture of it. Here's something that really freaks them out. Snapchat actually saves their images for 30 days. Okay? All I gotta do is write a hold order and get a search warrant, and I get what's on Snapchat. So this idea that it's going to disappear in 2 seconds is false. As long as I have a valid court order, I can see it. Last thing we do is, I do not know if C-Home is a participant in this organization, and I usually try to find out from the school district, but it's okay to say. Okay to Say is an anonymous tip line that was set up by the Attorney General's office, and it is the idea of this: if you see something, say something. It really is anonymous. Now, that doesn't mean that I might not figure out who sent in the anonymous tip, but it does mean that it is anonymous. And the most important thing is, in 99% of these cases, these are not criminal prosecution cases. These are a matter of getting resources to the school to deal with a situation that is emerging, to make school officials aware that they have a problem because the students are either frightened or intimidated or embarrassed to let the school officials know. And it at least gets resources or them aware of a situation that is ongoing. You know, whether it's bullying, whether it's a threatening message, whether it's stalking, whether it's sexting. Whatever it is the idea to get a resource out there so that your son or daughter, when they go to school, does not feel intimidated, does not feel harassed, does not feel frightened by the idea of interacting with other students. So we are strong advocates of the use of okay to say. Lastly, I told you, I gave you the punchline when I began. The whole idea is this, is that once you hit send, you never get that message, that image, or that idea back. And in order to put anything online right now, realistically, you have to be willing to surrender some amount of control of your personal life. If it's a sexting picture, you're surrendering a lot of control. If it's a mean post, well, someone may come back and they may remember that post and snapshot that post, and when you decide to do something else, decide to share it with the world. There was an example not that long ago. A pitcher for the Brewers was at the Major League's All-Star game. And while he was on the mound pitching, the discussion was quite simply what a great athlete he was, what a great fastball he does, the slider is phenomenal, whatever the discussion is. But during the course of his pitching on the mound, someone, a fellow student from high school, said, "Oh, you think he's a great person? Let me share what he has said on Twitter." Because he shared a lot of homophobic and ethnic prejudice on Twitter. And that was shared live while he was on the mound. So the discussion very quickly changed from what a great athlete he is to what a horrible human being he is. And it actually got so bad, he got pulled from the mound to disable his Twitter account. So the end result is simply this. What your son or daughters are doing on social media now is going to have consequences, realistic consequences. And what we encourage them to do is think about what they're saying. And what I appreciate from this group is that you are out here. I will go to an area school and have 2,000 students I talk to. I will go to a parents group the next night and have 10 parents. And you know, I realize everyone has busy schedules, but it's this. I can go out there and give them realistic consequences. I really need to partner with you for a daily conversation of what they're facing. I will modify this presentation probably 50 times in a given year, but I modify it based on the conversations that I have with you, school officials, and students. And in the end, it's simply this: put me out of business. I dare you. Thank you.